This Wellness Wednesday, we'll be continuing our palliative care series. This Wednesday, we will define the role of a care partner and explain why having a care partner is important and supportive for the person living with Parkinson's. We'll also provide helpful tools for care partners to recognize signs of strain and how to locate sources of support to look after your own health as a care partner. So you can learn more about this event and register to attend at parkinson.org/pdhealth. If you're new to Parkinson's or embracing a change in your journey, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We have a website with all kinds of information at parkinson.org. You can also reach out to our helpline at 1-800-4PD-INFO, which is staffed by Parkinson's Disease Information Specialists, or you can email us at helpline@parkinson.org. So today we welcome back Devon. Devon, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for sharing your time with our Mindful Parkinson's community.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's really such a joy. Nico and I look forward to these monthly visits to your community. And really, I hope that you get some from these practices together, because we certainly do. We come away feeling just full of gratitude and appreciation for your community here. So we've been on a long road trip now. We moved out of the mountains. We were in Oregon, and now we've been traveling across the country. So we spent last week in Colorado, and this week we're back in Madison, Wisconsin, which is another home of ours. Nico did his PhD here. So we have a lot of good friends, and it's very sweet to be back in the unceded territory of Ho-Chunk, the Ho-Chunk people. And in fact, this particular neighborhood I'm in, it's a university neighborhood, and there was a lot of indigenous gathering places originally here. So you can go see the burial mounds, and the indigenous folks who stewarded these lands for so long are still present here. They still live here. So very happy to be here with you today. We're going to talk about mindfulness of thoughts. So who here likes your thoughts? Who here likes to think? Sometimes they feel really burdensome. Okay, I saw some hands there. Krista and I were talking just before we got started that, our thoughts can feel so heavy and incessant and difficult, right? Anybody relate to that? Just the rumination, the circling that often we can't really control. Thoughts that are driven by fear, by worry, by regret, maybe. So our thoughts are a huge part of our lives. And the power of this mindfulness practice is that it gives us agency. So it gives us the choice to know whether to believe our thoughts, whether to follow them, or actually whether to create some space to realize that we don't need to identify with our thoughts. And so there's this famous phrase coming from the mindfulness-based stress reduction curriculum that teaches us that we are not our thoughts. We're not our thoughts. And the simplicity of that insight is profoundly powerful. When we realize that we don't have to be driven by the thinking mind. And so I'll just name, because a common misunderstanding of mindfulness meditation is that we're sitting in order to get rid of our thinking. We're trying to make our thoughts stop. Anybody think about that? Mindfulness is about stopping your thoughts, clearing your mind. And yet, I would actually offer a different definition, that it's the nature of the mind to think. The mind naturally is going to move. There's naturally going to be planning and remembering and all these kind of fantasies that come. The mind is very creative. And the idea is not to stop our thinking. In fact, we might get pretty frustrated if we try. Because sometimes my teacher says, the mind secretes thoughts like the mouth secretes saliva. So we can't stop that. Right? It's a bodily function. It's a mental function, thinking. But what mindfulness is doing, rather than stopping the thoughts, is learning to befriend them, So we're creating a more skillful relationship with the thoughts. And this is powerful. Then we're not driven. We're not on autopilot. We're not rushing here and there because of the incessant thoughts. We have more space. We have more responsiveness. So we're actually taking back our power in terms of befriending the mind. We're not, so controlling the mind. Everybody, have you tried to control the mind? It's kind of a futile attempt, right? It's like trying to leash a wild horse. We can't really control the thoughts, but we're befriending, we're relating, we're responding like we would with a little puppy, right? We love puppies. Just the mind is also very cute sometimes, just like a puppy, right? Not very well trained, but that's what we're doing here, just like we would train our puppy. So we're training the mind to release the thoughts, to not have to follow them. And then when it's time, we can pick them right back up. Oh, this is wonderful. Thank you for all the chats. I'm just noticing this is from Krista. Creating a more skillful relation with our thoughts, more space, more responsive, befriending the mind. Who said that? Somebody very wise. Wonderful. And I'm seeing some folks in Wisconsin and Chicago area. Yeah, close. That's nice. All right. So what do you say? Should we give this a try? Let's just do about 10 minutes, 15 minutes of meditation here. And in this particular meditation, we're not going to clear the mind. We're going to use the thoughts as the object of our mindfulness. And so I'll offer two metaphors, and you can see which metaphors work. The first one is that in this meditation, we become the sky, right? The mind is very open, very spacious, like the sky. And then clouds move through. Very naturally, we often have weather patterns. And those clouds are the thoughts. So can we stay open and aware, letting the thoughts just drift by like clouds? No problem. The second metaphor is like we're sitting on the banks of a river. And rivers are beautiful. We like to watch the current. So it's like we're sitting on the bank of the river, just watching the thoughts flow by. And of course, sometimes we get caught. We fall into the river, we get caught in the thoughts, the storyline. But the practice then is to climb right back out onto the riverbank and to continue watching the thoughts. So we'll do this together, and you can see which image or metaphor works better for you. Okay. So let's just settle in. You might find a comfortable posture. And you can take a moment with this. You know, sometimes we might have an ache or a pain. And feel free to really settle in, get another cushion, something, a blanket, more support, whatever your body needs to be really supported, restful, and alert. And we'll begin by taking 2 big, deep breaths together. Good. And you can let these exhales really invite you into this moment, calming the nervous system. And letting the breath return to normal. And just spending a moment or two inhabiting your body. And so this is a very gentle awareness. You're welcome to go inside and close your eyes or keep a soft downward gaze. And really letting your mind fully inhabit this body, this breathing body. Of course, in this body, there will be pleasant sensations, there'll be unpleasant sensations. And I know you've been doing some mindfulness of pain, displeasure, discomfort. So we're holding this body, this very imperfect body, with a lot of kindness, a lot of friendliness to this body right now. And now staying from this centered and embodied place, knowing thinking always happens in the body. You might first experiment with this image of the sky, the mind like the sky. Open, wide, spacious, boundless. And then within the sky, there's lots of space. There's plenty of space for the thoughts to drift through. And so we can stay with our mind like the sky. Often when we want to think, we don't. So if there are not a lot of thoughts, that's just fine. You can stay open and spacious. But if there are thoughts, maybe ruminations or problems you're solving or plans you're making, see how it is to let them be just as they are, just like clouds in this wide open sky. Can you stay with the sky and letting the stories just unfurl as they do? These might be pleasant thoughts, they might be unpleasant thoughts, or just the normal babble, maybe kind of neutral. But see how it is to create some space around them. We're not identified with them. So, really, these thoughts, these clouds can go anywhere, they can do anything because there's plenty of space in the wide open sky. There can be feelings in the sky, there might be some contraction or some response that comes with these thoughts. How is it to let it be? Just to hold it all with a lot of spaciousness. And if this sky metaphor is working for you, you're welcome to stay. Just feeling very wide open, letting the thoughts drift through like clouds. Or if you'd like to try this other image, from the body, we can imagine ourselves sitting on the bank of a river. And then all these thought patterns, whatever particular problems or plans you've been making, just letting them flow by like the current of a river. And there's no need to swim in the river, there's no need to dam up the river. You can simply let them flow by as they do. Very natural, even peaceful, maybe, because you're sitting still on the banks of the river and the thoughts are just simply doing their thing, flowing by. Nothing to fix or change. And if you do find yourself getting caught in a story or getting all wrapped up in some kind of worry, we simply remember with a lot of friendliness and then set ourselves back up, just the observer of this creative and dynamic and often wily mind. Just letting it be as it is. Now, just in the last few minutes, you might notice when we're mindful of our thoughts, we can learn so much about them. We can learn our certain patterns, our favorite thoughts, what we tend to gravitate towards. So, just in the last few minutes, notice if there's a particular habit of mind, your favorite problem to solve. Notice if there's something very familiar and see if you can hold it with this same kind of spaciousness. We have plenty of time to figure this out later. Just holding a deep friendliness and accompaniment with this thought. Nothing to fix or change. Good. So now, just at the end of the formal practice, just a few breaths, settling back into the simplicity of the body. So we can let go of any kind of effort at all. Just feeling the body, feeling the breath, and letting this moment be just as it is. Good. And now we'll keep our mindfulness going here. We're going to transition out of the formal practice, but see if you can stay with this present moment awareness as you shift and move, maybe stretch. If your eyes are open, you might look beyond your screen and just take in the world around you. Letting the eyes wander up and down, side to side. And just feeling how things might have changed, how your mind and body feel different after just 10 minutes of meditation. Just letting your system absorb the benefits. Okay, friends. So thank you so much for your practice here. I'll tell you, a lot of my thoughts during that practice were focused on the neighbors. There's a painting team next door and they have big, loud music. Can you hear this music in my background? Okay, I'm so glad. I was like, are they listening to this? They're rocking out right here. Oh, wonderful. I'm already seeing some chats. Yeah, Babs, I love Brookings. It's wonderful you're living there. It was amazing to be an observer. Yeah, and allow thoughts. Absolutely. Yep, that's the practice. And it's actually very simple. I think if we're practicing to get rid of the thoughts, I'm looking at signs. Something about living room is gorgeous. Yeah, this is our friend's house. Yes, we get into a whole struggle with the mind, right? Stop thinking, stop thinking, stop thinking. But actually, it's very easeful, like Babs is saying. It's just allowing. We don't have to get into such a struggle with the mind, right? We can let nature be nature, right? We're letting the mind be very natural in this way. And then Krista's asking, do you know why the brain jumps from thought to thought? So this is actually a really good question. When we lived in Madison here, we worked at a neuroscience lab, both Nico and I, that was studying the brain in the same way. We were studying mindfulness meditation and the nature of the brain. So there's different theories. One I might say comes from this theory of evolution that way back in the day when we were hunting and gathering and sort of forging for our existence, we were very driven by our hindbrain. Hindbrain is the ancient brain, and it's very fear-based. We always had to kind of be on the lookout for what's the next danger, saber-toothed tiger, right? Woolly mammoth, whatever it was. We had to be careful of all of these predators and these dangers in our environment. And that makes the brain pretty conditioned to jump, right? And to be kind of on high alert all the time. And even now in our modern day, we're not threatened by saber-toothed tigers, but there's lots of dangers around us. And our system doesn't know when we're sitting here in this beautiful house that we're not in danger. So even my hindbrain there was kind of jumping at the music next door, right? And whatever your favorite problem is, it will kind of go on alert because we're conditioned in that way. And this practice helps us retrain so that the forebrain that knows I'm actually safe, things are okay in this moment, can help respond to some of those younger, deeper, more primitive parts of our brain that are always afraid. But I've seen, I don't know if you've seen this, but even over the years we've been working together over these COVID years, the level of fear, anxiety, uncertainty, right? As climate crisis heats up and all kinds of political divisions and the world is much more unstable, we're more driven by this fear-based brain. So one theory would be that's why we're so out of control. There's other things to say, Krista, but I love that question. Thank you. So there's so many other questions. I think we have time for some more. I forget my thoughts are separate from me. Thank you for this reminder. Yes, it's so helpful. This is the game changer. It really is. I loved thinking of my favorite problem to solve as if rethinking it can change the problem itself. Yes. And isn't that kind of funny? It's good to have humor with the mind, right? We know some of these problems are unsolvable. Or, we have to have patience and wait until we have more information before we can solve the problem. And yet we have this habit of digging and digging and digging. And this is why creating space in the mind gives us more agency, because we see we don't have to be driven by all of those habits. Just allowing is so much better than trying to control. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And now I'm curious to know too, what were some of your favorite problems to think on? If you're interested to share, I'd be curious. Favorite problems to think on. I know mine is like, well, besides the music next door, is planning mind, right? Planning. I was taught that thoughts are things. Yeah, I think that's a helpful frame sometimes. To see them as objects outside of us. Yeah. Even as I take part in this session on mindfulness, I'm thinking about a math course I'm planning based on a book I'm reading, Once Upon a Prime. Yes. So sometimes, and this is a good comment, I'm happy for this comment, because the mind, like I said, is creative. And we don't want to shut that part down, right? We can really use our creativity, our artist minds. There's a surprise element to the mind. It can be very spontaneous. It can be thinking outside the box is an important skill. So I would say I work with a lot of artists and other creatives, and they say, mindfulness, I'm afraid it's going to make me lose my edge because I'm changing the way that I'm thinking or relating to the world. But actually, what I find with poets and writers and artists is that mindfulness helps their creativity because it allows more of that space for the dynamic quality of the mind to move. So planning a math course, great. But what we want to do in mindfulness is choose, right? We can choose, now's the time to plan a math course. Now's the time to feel my body. Now's the time to feel my breath. So again, there's this choice. And I think it was, what's his name? He survived the concentration camps. He's a neuroscientist and a psychologist. Krista, you might know, he's the one who said, between the stimulus and response, there is a space. It's within that space where all our freedom lies. So that's what we're doing with our thinking, is that we're creating that space between the stimulus and the response to choose. There's more choice. Okay, so a few more comments. The flowing water analogy was helpful, and I found a whirlpool. They all went for a while. Yes, this is why the river is good, because there's rapids, and sometimes we get all caught in the rapids, but there's always the riverbank to fall back on. So I like that, right? With thoughts, there's always a more steady place where we can observe from. The number of clouds seemed to match the number of thoughts quite a lot today. Watching the stream was more in line with my pace of thoughts. Yes. So this is good. Different metaphors for different qualities of mind, different moods or mind states. Yeah. And the river and the clouds is helpful. I really invite you to take this into your life. It doesn't have to be long periods of meditation. You can really see if throughout the day you hold this image in mind. Anytime you can look up at the sky and remember, oh, I can have that kind of space with my thoughts. Yeah. It wasn't Eli Weasel, but Weasel. It was a similar name. Of course, I'm going to think of it right when we end here. Very famous. Viktor Frankl. Exactly. Thank you, Bob. Yeah, that was it. Yes, when I get bogged down, I grab one of my knitting projects. That's wonderful because it's giving us, it's sort of like sitting on the riverbank, right? There's another option here. Yeah. So here's a longer message. I highly recommend a meditation podcast and app called 10% Happier. Yes, we used to work at 10%. We're good friends with them. One of the great ways to start is the Dalai Lama's Guide to Happiness. You can access that portion of the app for free. Yeah. I'm going through an incredibly challenging period and I'm turning to these over and over every day, and I always feel better afterwards. I'm so glad, Sarah. Yeah, that's really what they're meant for. I'll say one more thing. I know we're at time, but my favorite, here, I'm going to give it away. But in that Dalai Lama's Guide to Happiness, there's such a beautiful moment. There's someone who's really been suffering a lot through COVID and had a suicide in the family. And she's asking about compassion. How do I respond to all of this suffering and stress and difficulty? And the Dalai Lama, you know what he does? It's so spontaneous. This is this creativity that I'm talking about, because he's pretty spacious. He asked her to come up to him, and on his table, he had a plate of cake, like they had some celebration or something. And he actually fed her a bite of cake. And in that moment, it was so spontaneous and unexpected, right? Instead of some words of wisdom or some deep, profound insight, he saw suffering and he said, I'm going to actually offer some cake, right? Just some sweetness, a little simple bite. And I love that. I think this is that space between stimulus and response. When we create more room for our thoughts, we can have that childlike, that fresh, that spontaneity that is so needed in our world now. So our time went super fast as always, but I'm just so appreciative of each of you. And I hope that this is helpful. I hope it's food for thought, pun intended. And we'll see you next month. I think Nico is going to be back with you next month. So Krista, again, thank you so much. And Delia in the background, a lot of gratitude for all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Devon. We'll see you guys next week. Dr. Taylor Rush will be joining us for mental well-being. So we'll see you guys next Mindful Monday. And Devon, enjoy Wisconsin. I'll see you guys soon. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Be well.